It is not surprising that many people have the question, why? Why do we spend several years of our lives studying biotechnology, jurisprudence, theoretical physics, sculpture, or constructing? Why do we really need universities? Education in the modern world has become the most important factor in the development of society. It plays a key role in improving it. The university is the lifeblood of the city. We constantly try to bring in new, quality people and work with them, bring new energy and strength, encourage and give new vision to our students and the people of Rijeka in general. We support innovative projects, ensuring equal opportunities, promoting diversity and inclusivity, care about nature. And hey, we know how to have fun. We have our music festival, film festival, freshman camp. This is our radio station and student gallery. And, is this a beer? We have our yacht regatta. Yes, we love sports. Inter-University Center in Moise Palace on Stress. University Counseling Center. Scientific Development Centers. Vegan food? No problem. Program for the third age persons. Are you following? Gender Equality Plan. 16 faculties from economics to medicine. We sincerely believe in the European values of freedom and human rights. The university is an opportunity that provides a future open to everyone.
You have enjoyed this nice video about our university. I can only welcome you here at the beginning of our YUFE Town Hall event here at the Faculty of Civil Engineering. And since we already had a really nice welcome reception last night as an official start of this event, I don't think there's any need to add anything more, but I would still invite a couple of our speakers to say a few words here and to give you once again a very warm welcome. So first I would invite our rector, Professor Dr. Snježana Prijić-Samardžija, the host of this event, to say a few words.
Thank you, Sasha. Good morning, dear colleagues, dear friends. Welcome to one of our campuses at the University of Rijeka. I would like to welcome you all to Rijeka, to the University of Rijeka and the YUFE Town Hall. We are pleased to have the opportunity to host the annual YUFE event where we bring together leaders, institutional coordinators, and the YUFE teams from all YUFE universities, as well as representatives from our non-academic YUFE partners. This year, we are especially pleased to welcome the president of University Sorbonne Nouvelle with his colleagues, which will make our YUFE community a larger and more influential. Welcome. I would like to extend a special greetings to our students. We see your active participation in the YUFE Student Forum as exceptionally valuable and decisively beneficial to the entire YUFE community. With us today are also our esteemed colleagues from the other 6 European alliances, representatives from the European Commission and the European University Association, distinguished ambassadors, the Secretary General of Jeroen, the network from which YUFE emerged, the President of the European Student Union, and the distinguished experts, the former Madam Minister Blaženka Divjak from Croatia, who was there when we established the first generation of European universities, and very, very important for our universities. Also, Mr. Liviu Matei from King's College from the UK, but as a former rector of the Central European University in Budapest. We also will have with us Dirk van Dam, who will be joining us online from the US. All of whom, of course, will help make our deliberation about impact and the future of European universities more substantive and relevant. Also, I'm very much thankful to our colleagues from Zagreb, from the agencies, Director Antonija Gladovic and Vesna Dodikovic from our Agency for Quality Assurance and Accreditation. Welcome very much. Also, I would like to welcome all our colleagues from the University of Rijeka. You know, our people are our strength. We have given this event the title Impact, as you can see. Our panels will focus on how European alliances can become recognizable social actors, but also on how universities can become more influential in the era of polycrisis, where societal challenges multiply their impact on the quality of our European way of life. Thank you all for accepting our invitation. I'm convinced that our collective intelligence and the diversity of our perspectives will result in a better understanding and more effective action. In addition to our program, which is open to the general public, we will also use our gatherings for our internal meetings. So I will address a special welcome to the president of the YUFE Alliance, European Alliance, the president of the Maastricht University, Rian Lachert. We are at the beginning of the second four-year cycle, which is even more challenging and exciting than the first. In the first cycle, starting in 2019, we were thrilled by the really great evaluations we received, but even more by the fact that we are the part of the unique collaborative enterprise to shape the future of the European universities. After the first project period, we now know that the challenges of actually implementing the European University Initiative are various and numerous, from the financial, administrative, legal challenges to the challenges of creating the new mindsets and the new institutional culture in our communities. We are not only part of the most important project in the European higher education area, according to me even more important than the Bologna process, but we are active participants defining a new European landscape in higher education, research, and social responsibility. Even if the daily dilemmas worry us and they worry us, we should focus on our noble mission to be the lighthouses of the European values. The YUFE Town Hall is the official event in our program to celebrate University of Rijeka 50th anniversary and the 390 years of the tradition of the higher education in Rijeka. We think that it could be best described by one word: openness. This is the key word of our university. All events on the occasion of our 5th anniversary refer to a corresponding value, which express our deep conviction that our missions must be grounded in the universal values that promote the human well-being and flourishing. The value of this event is impact, and is illustrated by the words of Isaac Newton. If I have seen further, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. So, with our YUFE Town Hall, we want to send the message that there is no alternative for universities than the collective learning and the collaboration. That's the key. No idea can come from one single scientist, no matter how brilliant the person can be. We always rely on the ideas of those who came before us, and those who stand with us. This is the only way to ensure the enlightenment processes of society as a whole. So, finally, allow me to use this opportunity to express my warmest gratitude to my team at the University of Rijeka, which organized this event, and to the colleagues from the central office from the Maastricht. These people who are really committed to our joint venture, this is the young people of the shining and the bright energy. So thank you all Thank you all. I don't know, see you, but they know, and thank you very much for coming, So definitely, I wish to all of you a pleasant stay in Rijeka and to all of us successful event. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Rector, for these nice welcoming words. And today we are in the building of the Faculty of Civil Engineering, in these nice halls that the faculty offers to us. So I would also invite the Dean of the Faculty of Civil Engineering, Professor Mladen Bulic, to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning, these colleagues, dear colleagues. I welcome you all to our university campus, to our modern building that houses the Faculty of Civil Engineering. I'm very pleased that this event is taking right here. And thank you very much for coming, and I wish you a pleasant stay in Rijeka.
Thank you. And now I would invite the chair of YUFE Alliance and president of Maastricht University, Professor Rianne Lechert.
Thank you very much. Good. Ooh, let me see if I'm not breaking it. Good morning, dear colleagues, dear executives, institutional coordinators, work package leaders, students, distinguished guests that will listen, that will speak to us in a second, and representatives from all the organizations that Madam Rector just introduced. It is such a nice view to see all of you here. Let me give you just a few inside information for those of you who are not on a daily basis working within our YUFE community, because I don't want to repeat all the wonderful words that our Madam Rector has been just presenting to us, because you should know that town hall meetings are actually the highlights of our YUFE experiences, because in between the town hall meetings we meet all the time in Zooms, which makes everyone very small, and you actually don't get to know each other. Now, of course, we learned during the COVID pandemic that that is a very efficient way of working, but it's also not as nice if you meet each other, and especially in such a beautiful city as Rijeka. I woke up this morning, opening the curtains, and there's the sea. I mean, I'm from Maastricht, those of you who know it. The sea is very far. So being able to meet each other, to have a drink, to have a lunch, to have a dinner, to dance, that's a new tradition within our YUFE community. Sorry, Anthony, I have to say that, so be careful tonight. If there's some music, there will be dancing too. Because in the end, I think what Susanna very beautifully said, we want to create impact for our students, for our staff, for the societies in which we work, for our universities. But you can only do that when you also build relationships with each other. Because it's also hard work. It's hard work to get to know all the different systems in our individual countries, all the different cultures in our institutions. We all have different ways of working. The Dutch can be quite blunt. People from Croatia are more gentle and more modest. You have to get to know each other. And during the Zooms, it's efficient maybe, but it's not always the best way to do that. So I'm very much looking forward to meeting you all again in real life, discussing our joint ambitions to make our YUFE program, our YUFE ambitions, really something sustainable also for the future. You mentioned very nicely it's a lighthouse of European values. I always feel that when we meet each other. There's a lot of threats, external threats coming into Europe, but also into our own institutions. So we need to stick together and to make sure that also for our students and our new generations, we can also be that place of hope for the future. And that's why I'm so happy to see so many students here, because in the end we do this together for your futures, not we're the old generation already, unfortunately. With Rijeka turning already 50, which means that in the next Times Higher Education rankings, You are no longer part of the young universities. Just to, sorry, that's, you should start. In our hearts, we will stay young. And please also allow me to take just a few seconds also to welcome the Sorbonne delegation. We had the pleasure to visit Sorbonne some time ago with some of the executives present also here, to also visit your beautiful campus, to learn about your educational programs, your educational approach. And we are very happy that we are enlarging with the Sorbonne Nouvelle University, and we'll talk about that later today. Besides the town hall, we'll have our strategy council discussing all sorts of topics that are, of course, also important to discuss. But we're very happy that you're here today with your delegation. So a warm welcome also from me as the chair to you. And finally, Susanne already mentioned that the team. I am every time again amazed how much hard work our work package leaders, our institutional coordinators, our central office is putting into YUFE. It's amazing. It's an intrinsic motivation for all of these colleagues to work together, even with the difficulties we sometimes face in getting to know each other and taking the right steps. So also from the YUFE executives present here, because we are actually really relying on all of you. Without you, we are lost. I will be honest there. You prepare our meetings, you prepare the directions that we want to go. So if it wasn't for your hard work and dedication, there would not have been a YUFE. So a big applause for all of our staff and students who work on a daily basis to our mission, becoming the European University. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and it is of course especially nice to hear that you feel so welcome here in Rijeka. And finally, I would invite also our YUFE director, Dr. Daniela Trani, to greet the participants.
Good morning. They told me not to touch the microphone, so I will listen in the spirit of openness, right, and listening to each other. I would like to join Madam Rector and Professor Lechert, our chair, in welcoming you formally to the third physical town hall of the YUFE Alliance. And I agree with Madam Rector and the chair that this is really a unique opportunity, and it's an amazing view what I have from here. And I would like also to welcome the colleagues that are listening to us online. As you might have understood, I have had the best job in the world these past 4 years, working with executives that are so visionary and with colleagues that are competent, passionate, and really care about what we are doing. And also next to our students who have brought very constructive yet critical and renewing thoughts into the Alliance and the higher education landscape. It has been really a dream that many didn't think was possible. I look back at 2018, if I may, and we started from scratch. When we were telling, people, colleagues, what we were gonna do when we were so excited, some would say, no, that's not possible. And we thought all together as a team, okay, then we will show you that it is possible. If we can think of it, we can make it happen. And what I think we should also reflect upon today, I hope we can do it with our experts, with our colleagues, is that what we want to make happen is not only for the YUFE Alliance, the other European Universities Alliances, but for all the universities in Europe, for all the students, the learners, the citizens, because we have the responsibility as individuals, academics, professionals, to build something that is benefiting entire society. So I will this morning have the honor and the pleasure to moderate the first panel, and I hope that with the colleagues on this panel we can really trigger an open discussion, and I invite you all and myself to really listen to each other today, the coming days, the coming years, and not to be closed in our own opinions, in our own visions, but to bring our vision and to welcome the vision, the perspectives of the others, so that building from our complementarities, we can make something that's even today, even more unthinkable than what we have already built. So I wish you all a wonderful staying in Rijeka, a wonderful conference, and last but not least, I thank the colleagues from the Rector's Office for organizing what has already been a wonderful meeting, and I'm sure that more is to come. Have a wonderful conference, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela, and thanks also go to all of our speakers for these inspiring greetings. And as Daniela already mentioned, we will move now to our first panel, the panel that is dedicated to a very important point in time for this whole initiative, the European Universities Initiative, and therefore also for the YUFE, European University Alliance. In December 2022, YUFE, as one of the first generation alliances, has progressed from its initial 3 years phase that we call the piloting phase. We have progressed to a more long-term, sustainable and integrated concept. And so for the next at least 4 years and maybe longer, we will need to work on really embedding and upscaling everything that has been done so far. So as I said, this is an important moment in time. This panel is dedicated to, let's say, looking a little bit back, but even more looking forward. And we have gathered here a really interesting group of participants who can, from different perspectives, shed some light and input on this whole process. The panel will be moderated by Daniela, so I kindly invite you to join here.
I don't know. Okay, it works. Good morning to our panelists, and it's a pleasure to open the first session of the YUFE Town Hall 2023. In this panel, we will have both physical participants, panelists on site, but we have also two of the speakers joining us online. And I would like to check with the organization that the connection is working okay with our online panelists, and maybe if we can have them also on the screen soon so that I can introduce everyone. Things are moving, so good morning, Professor Divjak.
Good morning. Happy to see you, even on the screen.
We're very happy to welcome.
Thank you.
And Vanessa is also connecting. Good morning, Vanessa.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Welcome. Very happy to see you.
It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
So today, with our esteemed panelists, we will reflect on the future of European universities. We will look back at what has been achieved and discuss with them what are the next steps, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and what are the solutions that should be put in place in order to continue strengthening the European higher education area and building European universities, the future European universities, resilient and contributing to an even stronger society. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Vanessa de Villas-Anton, Head of Higher Education Unit at European Commission's Directorate for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. Vanessa, thanks for making time to join this panel. The second panelist is Professor Blaženka Divjak, the former Minister of Science and Education and professor at the University of Zagreb. His Excellence Gaël Vessier, Ambassador of France to Croatia, and I hope I didn't pronounce your last name too bad.
That was perfect.
Thank you. Professor Jarne Lechert, President of the YUFE Alliance and of Maastricht University. Margarita Katzdagli, the President of the YUFE Student Forum and student at the University of Cyprus. And Annalena Kles-Kulik, Deputy Director of Policy Coordination and Foresight at the European Universities Association. Thank you all for being here. So, the title of our panel is European Universities Starting a New Phase. European Universities' voyage started in 2018 with the launch of the first call for European Universities pilot projects under Erasmus+, with the first 17 alliances selected in 2019, and all of them run their first pilot phase between 2019 and 2022. Only a few weeks ago, this first round of alliances has started the second phase, and more alliances will begin the second part of their journey this year. At the same time, the number of alliances has been growing and will continue to grow in the coming years. They are being regarded as one of the playgrounds for policy developments that should contribute to future higher education, European higher education. So we are, at this moment, at actually an ideal time to reflect on what has been accomplished, what has been the experience from different stakeholders, and here I would like to stress the diversity and the profile of our panel. We have the view of member state representatives or former representatives of member state, the European Commission, the student bodies, the academic institutions, and the representative organs of universities. So it's a really unique source of reflection for us. I also want to give some housekeeping remarks. We will have a first part that will be a discussion among panelists, and then we will have time for Q&A. So please think of questions and flow out with them, because we want to know what is that it's triggering you and what you think we should reflect upon. I will try to tease our panelists with some questions that I think really bring us to the core of the topic. Now, we have more than 40 universities, European Universities Alliances, funded so far. And one question that I think it's important to be able to answer, not only for our communities, but also for society at large, is what is that European Universities Alliances have brought us so far? What are the benefits that they have brought to the higher education sector in the first phase? And what are the expectations of our stakeholders for the future? And Vanessa, I would like to start with you, if you allow me, and hear your thoughts on these topics.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Daniela. So you asked me to come up with two questions, right? So what are the benefits first of the alliances so far? So what we see first is a more long-term cooperation and partnership with a long-term vision to bring systemic, structural and systemic impact for all the members of the alliance across all their missions, education, research, but also innovation and service to society. The second aspect that we see is that this initiative has bring much more geographical balance when it comes to partnerships. So we see really real alliances with the universities from north, south, east, west of Europe. And that is absolutely essential if we remember the initial objective of the head of state and head of governments to go for such an initiative is to develop a real European identity. So very happy to see such new and more balanced cooperation across Europe. The third element, and I'm sure we'll discuss that more in depth in a moment, is this initiative to be a catalyst for change, to address bottlenecks that we see and that your university still see when it comes to putting together joint education activities across Europe, despite 20 years of the Bologna process. So we see this initiative as a catalyst for change. We're very happy to see that a number of member states have engaged in reforms at national level to facilitate transnational cooperation. And this will benefit the entire higher education community, not only the members of European universities alliances. And last but not least, of course, what we see as added values, all the new innovative approaches that you are implementing, putting in place, that you have put in place in the third 3 years when it comes to embedding mobility within the existing curriculum, with developing new programs, but also with embedding new innovative approaches to learning and teaching, such as new challenge-based approach and making sure that your students have the opportunity to cooperate with other students from different countries, but also from different disciplines to tackle real-life challenges so that they can really be actors of change during their studies. Now, what are the expectations for the future? First, after these 3 first years, now the main challenge is going to deploy these new innovative approaches to all your faculties so that a majority of students and staff can benefit from it. And that is a real challenge. Of course, we need to have the member states on board so that they can implement the council recommendation that was adopted last year to address the bottlenecks that you are facing. And what we expect in the future as well is to see more and more cooperation, not only within the alliance, but between the alliances. And I'm very happy that 6 different European universities alliances are present today for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thanks for introducing several important points that we will discuss also with our speakers today. So I would like to start from your last remark that has to do with the future expectations, and you mentioned the role of the member states in the implementation of Council recommendations, but I think also of more broadly what is emerging from European Universities Alliance's experimentation. And I would like to ask His Excellency, French Ambassador, for his view on this. What do you think that universities and European Universities Alliances are potentially offering to higher education from the perspective of a member state?
Does it work? Yeah, it does. So thank you very much for the question. I would first, of course, like to thank you, Madam Rector, for organizing this, hosting this event, and you for having provided these wonderful premises. And it's very exciting for me to be here at the same time for an anniversary, one of the University of Rijeka, but also for the official entry of Sorbonne Nouvelle, the very famous French university, of which I am an alumni, by the way, a long time ago, unfortunately, into this fantastic YUFE European University. What I would like to say in a nutshell is first that actually, at first there was a political vision. It was a French political vision, the one of the French president, and now it's a European success. This is exactly how things should be. In our view, everybody has got the right to have visions, but then what we need is European successes. It is a success because, as you mentioned it, there are something like 40 European universities active. Actually, my country, France, is of course taking a good part in that, with something like 37 projects or universities, French universities, participating into those European universities. And it means that 23% of students in France actually might be connected one way or the other to these projects. So it works in the numerical way. It does work too, because what we can see is that it changes exactly as the representative of the Commission did say. It changes the balance of the cooperation map between the universities in Europe. To speak about Sorbonne Nouvelle did inherit from the Paris University, which was created something like 800 years ago. So in 800 years, French University in Paris and Sorbonne Nouvelle did have plenty of time to develop cooperations with universities abroad, of course. But this kind of European project, European universities, actually gives a very strong incentive for every single university, big or small, to meet with new partners and to discover new partners on the road. And I think that this is what we are doing here in Rijeka, and it's a great event. It's a great way. It's a great way for the universities. It's also a great way for students to actually discover other EU cultures and countries. And we, of course, hope that it's going to continue. Actually, this is the way to build Europe, but I will come back to that later on in the discussion. Actually, Croatia is very strong in this, and I'm very happy that there are, I think, 6 projects in European Universities project in Croatia. France is happy to be the proud partner of 3 of these European universities, and we want to continue on that. The last thing I wanted to say is that it is working because it connects universities and students inside Europe. It also works because it is not something close. It's not something you're building Europe against the rest of the world. It's exactly the opposite. It's building Europe with the rest of the world. And actually, there is a big steps forwards when it was decided that 9 African universities are joining these European universities, and it was decided after a summit between the EU and the African Union. So things are moving. We are convinced that they are moving to the right direction. We want to support this as much as we can. This is why France, as much as did other member states, for example Germany, decided to have some national financing for additional to the European financing, of course, for the European universities, because we do believe that this is the best way to prepare French citizens and European citizens for tomorrow. So I will stop here, but of course happy to come back to all these fascinating issues, and thanks again for hosting this event. I think we need this kind of exchanges, and it's very good to do this in real life. Thanks.
Thank you for your enlightening perspective. And I agree with you. We need to discuss more and more, to listen to each other, not only to discuss within the universities, but even more with stakeholders. And I think that the students are really the bridge between academic institutions and society. And that's where also in YUFE we really support and try to support them and try to have them propose how to build this kind of contribution from their side. His Excellency, you mentioned the decision from the French government and the German government to support also financially, so not only in spirit, but also putting your hands in the pocket, European universities, and we are very thankful for this, because these 2 countries, together with a few others, have been setting the example already in 2019, 2020. And I think at the moment, if I'm correct, there are no member states that have not funded, provided some funding. Some are still organizing things. It's not yet clear what will happen in the second phase, but that's also why we have these discussions, because I think it's important also for the member states to hear from the alliances, as well as other kind of cooperations that have similar ambitions, what is that we are concretely developing and how this can be then embedded and upscaled throughout the institutions. I would like to make then a bridge to the Croatian perspective, since we have the honor to have Professor Divjak with us too. And I would like to hear what she thinks has been bringing from European universities, and what do you expect in the future that these institutions, organizations will do with each other and also with other institutions that are not yet in alliances?
Yeah, so thank you very much, and I would like to congratulate to the YUFE network, all the members, and here, of course, especially to University of Rijeka as a Croatian member of the YUFE network, and the rector as well, because I think that her energy and commitment to these European values actually are very important for the University of Rijeka, but also for Croatian higher education landscape. And yes, you're right. Whenever we have something new, like it was European University Alliances 5 years ago, we should think how to actually implement the vision into action, how to actually start from the goals and vision, and then have really goal-oriented actions. And I agree that with His Excellency that it was very important, this vision, French vision at the beginning. But when it comes to the European Union, we should take into consideration diversity of visions and diversity of perspectives and try to make some kind of a common denominator out of it. So on one hand, we have a very high expectation because of a cooperation. We expect universities to cooperate, but also for the European Union, be innovative, creative, and competitive on a global basis. How actually we can do both. It's not always very clear, but I think that we are now much closer to the answer than it was, we were at 2018. So I think that this inclusiveness and equal opportunities on European level is actually essential, because this inclusiveness and equal opportunities can bring us together in Europe, and also to give us opportunity to be the leading higher education system in the world. So it is not, these two are not in contradiction, but actually these two visions support each other. And of course, this cooperation means also cooperation level of colleagues, so level cooperation, co-creation with students, but also university co-creation together with community at large. And I would say that this last one, it's not so, let's say, vivid and not so in action so far, as far I can see it right now. But I would put this at the very heart of the future development. And another one, it is about the talents. You know, talents are distributed equally, but opportunities are not. So when we look at the different European countries, different systems, young people all around our beautiful continent, it's obvious that we have not so beautiful processes, because we have, you know, brain drain, we have brain gain, we have those that are actually attracting young people from certain countries to much richer countries. And then we have further processes that are not so let's say, beneficial for the European continent, and of course, especially for European Union, because of this very, very strong divide and the gap. And we should really be very open about it and see how we can use European University Alliances to make it better, to give opportunities for young people in Croatia, the same as France or Germany or Netherlands or in Poland, whatever. Otherwise, we are not actually working not just according to the mission of European alliances, but also we are not working in line with European values and foundations, because it is not just thinking about free movement of people, but equal access, equal opportunities, and also especially for talents, because talents are the most valuable and highly appreciated on the global level. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Divjak. It's really important that such a thought-provoking remark comes from you as an academic. So if I understand correctly, what you stressed at the end is that European Universities Alliances can be an excellent opportunity to not only innovate educational approaches, but also to really improve the access to opportunities for all the young people, to all learners in Europe. And I think this is a very important point, because the risk is otherwise that we will build something that is a beautiful object, a beautiful policy instrument, but that serves a very limited group of citizens at the end. And by doing this, the risk is that we increase the divide, not only across Europe, but also within different countries, because there are differences also within countries. And the remark comes from you as an academic, so I'm also really interested in hearing what Anna-Lena thinks as a representative of the European Universities Association, and she speaks to stakeholders, to academic institutions throughout Europe. What is the view that universities have themselves on what is happening and on what should be expected in the future?
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to indeed present a little bit the broader sort of view that we have as EUA with our really diverse membership. We have more than 800 members in the whole of the European higher education area, so far beyond the EU and also far beyond the countries that can actually be involved in the initiative. But what we've seen over the years is actually quite a continued enthusiasm of many of our members to engage with this initiative and to engage in alliances. We have now, with all pilot calls and everything together, about almost close to 300 of our 800 members that are involved in alliances. So there you can see that's quite a lot, but it's of course not all. It's close to 1/3. And I think that's quite sort of representative in terms of what this means for the European higher education landscape. Of course, universities have collaborated before this initiative. And that is actually a reason why this initiative was so interesting for them. Because at the time when these 2-3 sentences were in the Sorbonne speech of President Macron, this was at a time when there was already a lot emerging in the European higher education sector. A lot of these more strategic, maybe a little bit smaller collaborations started already, and the Euron actually, for instance, started, if I remember, Sylvia, also a few years before that. And there were other of these strategic partnerships emerging. So there was a window of opportunity that this political vision matched with what was already in the sector. And I think this is what then has taken off and what has made it possible to actually create this enthusiasm within the universities. And what it has put in the center very much, I think, is the university as an institution and how it collaborates with others. Before, at the European level, we discussed a lot about mobility of individual students, individual researchers, but we often, as representative organization, in the discussion with the Commission, with member states, we were a bit like, yeah, the institutional perspective is not really addressed in the policies so much. It's also, of course, difficult because the competences at the European level are limited for that, but we have seen a change with that through the universities initiative, really, that we are much more looking at the broader purpose of collaboration. What are we collaborating for? Of course, for the students, but also to address together many of the societal challenges through joint research and so on. And what it has also brought, and I think that's sort of making already a transition towards not only talking about what works, but also what's still very maybe tricky, it has shed light on the challenges. Transnational collaboration was there before, 20 years of Bologna process, which has brought a lot of good things, a lot of good reforms, but we also see that there are still challenges in quality assurance of joint programs, in recognition, in all the things that have been discussed for 2 decades. And the university alliances have shed new light on this, and I think they've also brought this to the attention of university leadership again. which is very important to look at this from the top, but also from, bring the different levels of the university together to address these challenges together. So that is something very positive, and that is also something that then can be helpful for the sector as a whole in seeing how this can be addressed together. And it has triggered already reform discussions in some countries and concrete sort of, revived some of these reform implementations that are quite into the nitty-gritty of the changes that have to be made there sometimes. So for the future, I think, because you asked about what are the expectations, I think the expectations are really as well that now member states who have made all the great political commitments and supported universities in that continue with that support and are willing to make more flexible regulatory and funding frameworks to support universities, be it those in the alliances or the others. That would be a wish for the next steps. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Annalena, and thanks to all the panelists so far, because I don't know about the audience, but I'm feeling hope here. If you think of the discussions we are having now and that we have been having in the past 3 years, actually, there is openness to listen to each other, to hear each other's perspective. And this is key, because if you have stakeholders coming to the table and very openly sharing their thoughts, their perspective, their challenges, well, that's the most important, the key starting point to then develop together frameworks that can support the institutions, the member states, the Commission, the representative bodies to build a stronger, a better, a more inclusive, more accessible higher education for Europeans, but also a framework that can be an example for the rest of the world. So I really like the spirit that we are having here, and of course we will also go back to the challenges, Annalena, because they are really important and we need to speak about them. But what you said that especially struck me is that for the very first time in a few decades, I think, we have a policy development that is really bringing back the focus on what matters, what is difficult to address, and is providing a potential opportunity for universities then to be able to overcome some of the obstacles that you mentioned. But before we move to that, I would like to keep it, on the hopeful note, and then ask two representatives from the universities community what they think. What is that what kind of fresh air came in the universities for the students? So I'll start with you, Margarita, and also for the community at large, Rianne, from the point of view of an executive of a Dutch university, but also as the chair of the Youth Alliance.
Thank you. So coming from a university that's so far from Central Europe, from Cyprus, the first thing I think of is how an alliance, a European alliance like YUFE, can bring cultural exploration for students like me, from a small island. And I also think about how much YUFE brought, how much equality YUFE brought to students that do not have access to physical mobility. So the online classes that YUFE brings with the student journey to students that might not have the access to, the financial access to physical mobility, it's very important to think about that. And also, I'd like to bring the point of the community engagement the students have during the mobility when they're in the alliance. When you think about YUFE, when I think about YUFE, I think about the civic engagement, the voluntarily work, the challenge things. So I think about how important it is for our alliance that the students connect with their community through through voluntary work. So, for example, in our university, there were some teams that were teaching English to refugees. So that's a very important thing to have in mind, to think about how our students not only have connection with the community, but with other communities, with not only European communities, but with people that are struggling, and they can really see a world outside of Europe as well. And it's also important to think about how we are international in our cities, and we're so different between us, but we're also integrating our students in our cities through YUFE. Yeah, and it's also very important to think about the way YUFE is trying to break down the barriers between the countries with the language courses, of course.
That are already in the home institutions, because all universities in Europe are high-quality institutions. There are additional dimensions being added. The dimension of civic engagement, of multicultural exchange, the thirst to get to know and understand each other, because only in that way we can build a more cohesive Europe. And this is what you and your colleagues are finding, but also co-creating in YUFE. Rianne, what is your view?
Yeah, what can I say new? Because I think you've mentioned all the, benefits of being part of a European alliance. I would first of all say that it has brought also a lot of creativity and innovation. I think universities tend to be rather conservative if it's about changing your internal organization. We always need to push in order to make these changes happen within the different faculties. That's, I think, a universal given. And what YUFE has really done is to give our staff the opportunity to go beyond the legal and administrative obstacles that we face with our national legislation that are not compatible with each other's, with our own ambition. So if I look at, you mentioned the quality assurance systems differ, examination laws differ. There are so many differences between all our partners. But what I see our staff doing is go beyond that and find ways to develop joint programs, find ways to include our other stakeholders, whether it's the cities, whether it's enterprises. We work around it. And that is what the ambition, I think, is within these European alliances, that we do not let ourselves to be stopped by the national hurdles that are there. So I think that's a good thing, because that also shows to our national governments that this is serious. We are serious about this European ideal. And we want to move towards the European degree, because that is, in the end, one of the results that we are aiming for. And by showing through all the different pilots that we have that we can do it, I think is one of the most crucial parts of the YUFE or European alliances in general. Maybe a second, because I don't think, do you want to talk about the challenges already? Because I do think what I see is very important with the European alliances is that they show that the European spirit between the institutions is there, even though at the nationalist level, within our political arena, I don't always see that same sentiment. And what I see is still missing is a larger outreach from the European alliances, what the benefits are that you so eloquently described for the students and our staff. And to give you just one example, within my own country, currently we have a huge debate within Parliament to actually disencourage the influx of international students, including also European students. So the whole idea of having European mobility between staff and students, lower thresholds, freedom of movement for also students, that is really under threat at this same moment where we are also asked, and happily to do so, to invest in these European alliances. That's very paradoxical, I would say. And I think we need to make our voice heard much, much louder why this is so important, also on our national levels. And there I think we should invest more heavily in our communication, in our outreach, by using also your voices, because that I think is what will also appeal to the politicians if they see what the benefits are for the young generations investing in these European ambitions. But I do see a real risk at the moment, at least in my country, but I also see it in some of the other countries.
Thank you, Rianne. I saw that there was a problem with the microphone, so I would like to check with our technical team if everything is working. Thanks for bringing in a very important theme that is of the heavy, really big challenges that we have. I think I would like to move to discuss the challenges actually, also because we need to make sure that our session ends by 11:35. So I would like also then to immediately ask Vanessa, which are the factors connected to challenges to ensure sustainability of the European universities' alliances. If we think of obstacles like the ones that Rianne mentioned, how are they compatible with an idea, a vision? Sorry, they are indicating me that something is wrong with the connection. So I will, our panelists online are back. Is everything working now? I ask the technical team. Vanessa, Professor Diviak, can you hear me? I don't think they can hear us. So I will, if you can signal me when problems have been solved, I will continue with our panelists here. So going back to the challenges then, I would like to ask His Excellency, what are in his view the key challenges that European universities alliances are facing and that need to be addressed, recognized and addressed to ensure that long-term success of this initiative is reached?
Thank you very much indeed. It's a bit difficult for me because obviously the universities themselves are the best place to answer to this question. Nonetheless, a few things, while we are of course in contact with French universities, a few things would emerge. Actually, sometimes it can give an impetus on moving forward things which were already pretty well established. For example, the need to be able to communicate in a single language, which is not always that developed. So it can definitely help. Apart from that, moving from phase 1 to phase 2, it seems to me that the big question now for us collectively, of people involved in this project, is actually how to make things sustainable, how to make things, in the long term. And for that, definitely, there are some European universities working on European diploma, to have a single diploma delivered by the European universities, but also asking whether it is necessary to have a legal structure to hire teachers directly, this kind of things. It is technical, but of course, ultimately, it is very important for the long term. Apart from that, I do think that there is the other thing is to try to reach the right balance. But of course, others may have more direct views on this. What is the ultimate number of universities which could participate into a European university? At which point does it begin to be too wide, or is the coordination too heavy? But I'm sure that you have a more direct view on this. And also how to strike the balance between the European nature of these European universities and the opportunity to open with some other continents, countries, neighbors, partners. Always good, and at the same time, it's good if it opens this European building construction that we are having without diluting it. So we have to strike the right balance here. I will stop here, but basically many things have been on, and I think that it is becoming a new normal to some extent, and that's very good, and we have to focus on that, and very happy to participate modestly in this big reflection now.
Thanks for also bringing back what also Rianne already introduced before, which is the European Degree Label pilot initiative that has been launched. Because there is a direct connection also with how we organize the work, the cooperation between universities. And I would like also to use this opportunity to mention that the University of Rijeka for the YUFE Alliance is coordinating the YUFE Alliance's pilot together with the other two alliances, ECIU and Epicure. And that's also some further development of the initiative as a whole, because alliances now are also working together, joining forces to really experiment this kind of frameworks together, and together also get into a dialogue with the member states. And I think the other point that you brought is also really something we should not miss and not forget, that we have also a role model responsibility for the rest of the world, and that we need to create an initiative that will continue to add also to the relationship with the other universities, other institutions and stakeholders across Europe. Annalena, I am sure that you have also interesting thoughts on the challenges, so I would like to hear your perspective on this.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, some of the challenges have indeed been mentioned already. You said so as well regarding quality assurance of joint programs, and many things linked to the education side. What I would like to do also in the interest, I think, of time is to look at the challenges from an institutional point of view, really, and see, because how can we address them in the future? What will make alliances sustainable is, I think, from the point of view of a university, is as well how to actually make an alliance elevate the capacity that each university has to follow its own mission. How does it fit in the university strategy to be part of an alliance? Because, of course, universities are collaborating on other scales as well with other partners. Not everything happens through the alliance, and that's good as well. But, of course, this poses a lot of question, a lot of choices you have to make as well in an institution, whether you do things with alliance partners, you do things with other partners. What about the research dimension, which we haven't even yet touched about, which is still very much under development, and it follows different dynamics than the education side, because research collaboration, as you all know, is much more peer-to-peer, so there is not so much you can actually steer necessarily from the institution level, and your partners might be different. So I think to make the alliances sustainable and to sort of continue this enthusiasm in the university sector to build these alliances, you have to address. We try to sort of structure this a little bit, 4 challenge areas. The first one, we talked already about the purpose challenge, because we all agree that the alliances have great purposes, but every sort of member of the university community, every university leader who is involved in this, and even the policymakers may have slightly different motivations, what they want from the alliances. And there are a lot of demands put on the alliances, a lot of things they are asked to solve, but we're only 5 years into this, and that's a very short time if we talk about long-term sort of transformation processes within an institution. You mentioned that before as well. Change in universities takes a lot of time. That's not always a bad thing either when you have to deal with a lot of external short-term pressures. You also have to take time and allow universities time to build this collaboration. So this purpose challenge is a continuous one. And then, you know, the rector changes, and what is with a new leadership, you know, you have to build, you have to motivate the people also in the different levels of the university to really engage in this. The governance challenge is another one, how to go from the project logic of the first phase into a more sustainable governance model, where you actually have to find a way to very pragmatically work with the different governance setups that you have in universities, and also the different traditions of representation of students, of staff, and how to find a way that you can have every voice heard, but keep decision-making efficient and effective, that you actually can go forward. That's the governance challenge. The funding challenge we already alluded to, and I would like to bring just a short different perspective to that, because we often talk about where do we get funding for the next phase of the alliances. From a university perspective as a whole, there is of course the sustainable funding challenge generally. There are loads of differences in funding levels, funding frameworks, regulations around this in European countries. And so there's a plea for sustainable public funding for universities, I think, and also more financial autonomy in the way you can actually allocate internally to the university of funding, that a university can make the active choice to give funding to support certain activities of the alliance or to other collaborations, depending again on what serves best the purpose and the implementation challenge. And that for that, I think we have to really overcome some of the regulatory barriers, for instance, in quality assurance and so on. But I think, to end on a good note with that, there are, especially regarding the joint programs, which are of so great interest, I think, to many of the alliances, including yours, there is already, this is not a new problem. In the Bologna process, in 2014, I believe, the ministers in the conference, in the ministerial conference in Armenia, they have adopted the European approach to quality assurance of joint programs, but it's only implemented in a bit less than half of all the Bologna countries. This is not a thing that will solve every single problem, because there are still things at institutional level that have to change as well. But this would be a first concrete step and a first tool that we have already, that is there, that could help with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalena, for this very extensive reflection that has pointed out many of the key challenges alliances, including YUFE, right, Rian and Margarita, are facing at the moment. And I'm very happy that Vanessa and Professor Diviak are back. So I would also like to ask Vanessa, I don't know if you heard, but we were discussing challenges for European universities' alliances to become sustainable and achieve their impact, factors that are key in this. And we would like to hear the perspective from the European Commission on it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for reminding the question, and happy to be back with you. So indeed, the challenge of purpose, maybe I will build on what Annalena has just explained. I think it was a very good summary of the ongoing challenges for this initiative. Purpose and governance are absolutely key to make sure that these alliances are sustainable. And for this, as Ryan explained before, it's really a mix of a top-down, bottom-up approach. So key role of the leadership. Make sure that as other panelists explained before, that there is a strong synergy and strong link and strong alignment between the strategy of each member higher education institution together with the long-term strategy of the alliance. Basically, this alliance will be able to work and to be sustainable in the long term if all the activities from its members work towards that direction. So, and for me, that is the crucial challenge in the coming 4 years. This is what we call this deployment phase. And that is absolutely essential. It's not only about developing new joint activities between the members with new joint program, but it's about how you're going to transform and to embed these new innovative pedagogies, these new activities into all the existing programs. That's the only way that a large majority of students and staff can benefit from it. So that's absolutely essential. Now, and Ryan mentioned, what is the long-term perspective? We want to work towards a joint European degree to facilitate the development of joint programs that can then deliver joint European degrees. And this not only for the members of the European universities, but for the wide higher education sector. So all the sector, all higher education institutions, including all members from the UA, can benefit from it. And for this, it's really important that we work on all the building blocks to make it possible. One building block is the Council recommendation on building bridges for effective European higher education that was adopted last year. Now we need to make sure that it is implemented by member states, and they are supposed to report to the Commission in the coming months the measures that they intend to put in place. So that's a very important element. The second one, and several of you mentioned it, is quality assurance. Quality assurance is not fit for purpose anymore to this new type of cooperation. We need more agile quality assurance systems, and we need more trust between the quality assurance systems so that an alliance of universities can really get their joint activities, joint programs accredited by one national quality assurance agency in one country, and this should be enough for all the other countries to recognize it. So we need to work in that direction, but it's only one example of how to make quality assurance more agile and more fit to the current and future reality. A third element, a third building block, is how can we better recognize and better valorize all the investment, the time, the energy put forward from the academics, from the staff, into such more advanced cooperation. We are very, very grateful to all the time, energy spent by the academics to make these alliances and European universities a reality. We know that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy to put forward to make it work, to find workarounds from the bottlenecks that you can find on your road. And this needs to be recognized in the career path of the academics. So that is why the Commission has announced in the European Strategy for Universities that we would put forward a proposal at European level that we are going to co-develop together with member states and the higher education stakeholders to put forward with concrete proposals to work together in that direction at European and national level together. And last but not least, we have now selected 10 Erasmus Plus projects to test, to explore European criteria to deliver a joint European degree label that can then be a very strong basis to develop a joint European degree. And 4 Erasmus Plus projects to work on a legal status at European level for these alliances. This is absolutely essential for a long-term perspective for alliances to put together their strengths, their budget, their resources together so that they can better act together at all levels, European national level. So that's why legal status is so important and can facilitate as well the delivery of a joint European degree. So that is for the long-term perspective. Now, we understand, and that's the last point, Daniela, that more long-term funding is necessary. So now with Erasmus Plus, we have provided 4 + 2 years long-term perspective, but now in the context of the midterm review of all the European instruments, it will be a good opportunity to look at the next perspective beyond 2027. And that is why we want to work on what we have called an investment pathway together with the universities and the member states.
Thank you for closing with such a good news that again brings hope to the sector and to the initiative. I think hearing about these concrete plans, everything you have listed today gives a lot of perspective about the work that the Commission and the Member States are carrying out. And what I would like to continue to plea also on behalf of the other alliances, please ask us for input anytime you need, because the work we are doing it so that our experience, our progress, our challenges can be put at use of our universities in Europe and beyond. We are almost running out of time. So I would like to still ask one question to Professor Diviak and to His Excellency. And I would like to ask you to keep your answer short, but I'm very much interested in hearing what is that you still want to leave the audience with today. What are the thoughts that we have not yet shared and that you really would like everyone to reflect upon in the coming period? Professor Diviak, please.
So thank you. I agree with all the points that have been mentioned here, but I would like to emphasize another one, that actually universities and actually all these alliances, European alliances, should stay relevant. And we have a moving target, to be honest, because and several targets, because now we have big societal issues, challenges. I would like just to mention aging society and let's say demand for new skills. Yeah, and it is very important that universities should be active part of the solution and working on that. For example, I agree, everything around joint programs are wonderful, and we should find ways how to speed up the process. That's very much at the very heart of the European universities, but also there are other important issues like micro-credentials, micro-qualifications, AA, yeah, artificial intelligence, and of course there are a lot of work have been done so far. Works have been done so far on European level, European Commission level around that. But it is not just AA in education as just implemented, but to think about the ethical use of AA, how to avoid biased use, biased algorithms, biased data, and so on. So I think that universities should really stay relevant and should be fit, lean, moving, and not fat and old. It's not some chronological age, but actually how we feel it and how we are reacting, and not just reacting, but leading societal processes.
Thank you, Professor Diviak. So it's not all about degrees and traditional form of recognition, but really about what is that learners need to contribute to a dynamic society, and universities need to stay young, like Madame Rector and Professor Letcher said. We are an alliance of young universities, so I really still claim we are very well placed for the task you have indicated. We'll continue to do our best. His Excellency.
Thank you very much. Actually, when you ask people in Europe what are the big successes of Europe, what they are proud of as being Europeans, they would not mention Eurozone, they would not mention Schengen, even though they are very important, but they would mention Airbus and Erasmus. And Erasmus is a huge success. Since 1987, 12 million European students have been through the Erasmus Plus now process at one point or another. So what we are trying to build here is something which would be as significant as Erasmus was back in the day, building, of course, in the successes of Erasmus to go further, because after all this, it's extremely important, but it's a tool. It's a tool to make sure that by 2000, I don't know when, 30, 40, 50, no student in Europe or no young people in Europe will not have an EU experience outside of his own country, be it an apprenticeship, be it a European university, be it whatever. But one significant experience to share, to understand the differences, because as long as you have not understood the differences, you cannot build on the common points that we do have. And we do have very strong common points between Europe, but we have to build on them if we want to continue to have the continent which is in the world, the one who provides at the same time the highest degree of liberty and the highest degree of security. In some other places you may have the same degree of liberty, in some other places you can have the same degree of security, but the two at the same time, it's a European thing, we can be proud of that, we should build on that, and I think that this is what the European citizens of the future, the students now want to achieve, and we have to help them to do so. So this is the political framework, I think, which is we should not be completely lost because it's the very basis for what we are trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. And I think that this remark really summarizes, and I think, Vanessa, if I may nominate His Excellency as the author of the next European Universities Alliances Manifesto, I would like to do so, because I think he summarized the spirit. Let's learn from each other to continue building together. And this also connects to Professor Diviak's remark from the beginning about accessibility for everyone to the best opportunities, learning opportunities, and not only intended as only academic learning opportunities we can have. So we could not have closed this discussion with the more relevant remark, His Excellency. Thank you so much for that. And I'm now looking at our hosts here, and I know we are over time and that His Excellency has to leave very soon, but I see some hands raised. So I would like to open the Q&A, even if it might be a short one. There is one of our bright YUFE students raising her hand, and I would like to ask if someone can pass her a microphone. There it is, please. And please could you introduce yourself before asking your question?
Thank you very much. My name is Manisha Bieber. I'm a student of Maastricht University and also of YUFE, the student journey, as well as I'm part of the student forum. I'm alongside Margarita, the vice president of the student forum. And I actually have two questions, if you will allow me, please. And the first one actually goes more to the Commission side. As His Excellency had mentioned, there are difficulties with communication, not just internally, but perhaps also externally. It would be nice to have something perhaps on a singular dimension. And how could you perhaps aid also all of these, not just us, but in general, students or European university initiatives to also bring this to the outside? You had mentioned Erasmus is so successful, but I have to admit Erasmus is so successful because it is extremely well known across the world. How can we make ourselves be known across the world, not just here in Europe, not just in these localities of the universities, but really far wider? And my second question, if you don't mind, goes more to the executives from the YUFE Alliance itself. Perhaps you could give us some insight, as sometimes students most definitely are more European perhaps, or are more, non-conservative than perhaps the institutions themselves. And sometimes we have beliefs that we would like to push and break traditions and customs far more than perhaps, is actually possible. What kind of suggestions can you give us in order to actually actively work against these customs and try to break down barriers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manisha. Well, you see how bright our students are. They make us so proud, and I have to say, they leave us speechless most often. So I'm glad that the questions are not for me. Vanessa, I'll give you the word first, and then Rianne, you're up next as an executive on the panel.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this excellent question. So you're absolutely right that it's very important to make this initiative and the outcomes of this initiative well known, not only within your university, but also within your regions, your cities, at national level, at European level, and also beyond Europe for all the fantastic partners that universities have beyond Europe. So we actually discussed this point between 44 rectors that are part of this initiative, and together with our commissioner. So we are ready to work together on that front. I think it's very important also for the long-term perspective of the initiative to show the outcomes and the results, and, well, the first results and outcomes of the initiative. So that's very important for the next steps. So we are going to work together with the alliances. We will have a meeting next month, early next month, also with all the coordinators to discuss many points, but including this one. And we are working as well with the EU presidencies to organize every year a forum of the European universities that showcase the added value, the outcomes of the initiative, not only to the higher education sector, but also beyond, as we said, cities, regions, how these alliances of universities develop the skills that the regions, the cities need. You mentioned artificial intelligence, but also I would like to mention the green skills as well that are very important. The Commission just published a communication, a net zero industry plan, where skills is a very important element of it, of course. So that's very important. The Spanish presidency plans to organize this next forum in Barcelona on the 14th and 15th September. So that's a very opportunity to showcase it. Also, partners beyond Europe will also be invited, as they were invited last year in Versailles, so that's very important. And we are going to work hand in hand also with the students. We work hand in hand with the with the SN, with the students to see how to communicate even better. We are going to revamp as well our website at European level to together with the alliances to showcase even more the results and the first outcomes that they are having. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Vanessa, for this very comprehensive explanation of the approach you are undertaking for communication. And again, I'm always the one who is ready to give work to others, so I will not disappoint anyone today. And in case you would like input from our students, I think Margarita, Manisha and all the colleagues from the Student Forum will be very happy to provide input on the actions that you will be setting up in the coming period.
Fantastic, very much welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe very briefly, it's working. Well, the Student Forum is an integral part of our governance structure within YUFE. But I think the next step should be for you as students of YUFE to align with the local participatory bodies in our institutions to have your voice heard there, whether it's through statements, position papers, because then we also get more attention from our deans, our vice deans, and including the students from within our institutions to also join forces with you. So that would be my recommendation also, to make sure that the conservatism that's sometimes there gets pushed away from bottom-up student voices. I always use that strategy, don't put that on Twitter, with my internal younger researchers community. When I feel, okay, this is going too slow, I ask them, please let your voice be heard, because then things will change. So that would be my recommendation for you.
Thank you, Rianne. And I saw also Margarita nodding, so I think she has a plan there, as always. And I would really like to take more questions, but unfortunately we have to close. We are over time. But I would like to thank all the speakers here on site, as well as online, for their wonderful contributions and for really starting to inspire us for this very productive day and a half of conversations. I would also like to thank all of you here for listening, and also home, and for contributing with your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, thanks to our panelists. I think this was a perfect first panel to start the event. Just a small note, since we are a little bit over time, we will have a very short coffee break. So please take just 5 minutes if you need it. Be back here, and then we immediately start with the second panel on the European strategy for universities. So I think that we are ready to move back to our places now and start with the second panel. The second panel is dedicated to a very important policy development in the European higher education, to the European strategy for universities. Now, I think it shows, well, the relevance and importance of this document is also demonstrated by the fact that in the first panel you have heard many references to this, to the content of this document. Even when it was not explicitly said so. So many of the things that we have heard about, things like a joint European degree, legal status for alliances of higher education institutions, those are all very important parts of the European strategy for universities. Now, this document has been passed a little more than a year ago, and it is very interesting to see what has been achieved so far based on the document or facilitated by the document and all the let's say spirit in its background, but even more so how this will be done in the future. Now, of course, YUFE is a very motivated, enthusiastic European University Alliance, and that's why we have here four representatives of four such European University Alliances. So we have YUFE, Circle U, Utopia, and Arcus. But we don't want to only remain focused on only on the alliances, and it is therefore also our honor to have here representatives of Young European Research Universities Network, YERUN, and European University Association Council for Doctoral Education. Now you will have opportunity to hear from all of these speakers. This is really my pleasure and an honor. And Dr. Alexander Hasgal from the European University Association Council for Doctoral Education has joined us online. So, without further ado, I would pass the word to Silvia Gomez Recio, Secretary General of YERUN.
Let me see. Is it okay? Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Alexander, to giving us the floor. He invited me to be here, like giving you a lecture. And I'm not sure I want to give you a lecture, but that's another part of the discussion. But I wanted, if you allow me 2-3 minutes, to say how pleased I am for being here, because well, we saw the birth of YUFE when we were discussing with the European Commission this possible initiative. Vanessa, and maybe she's still there, the first time I met her was not that convinced of what we would achieve with the initiative of European universities, because it was kind of dropping from the sky of the ministry saying, hey, we should have European universities and work on this. But how we do it, that was something that indeed was left to the European Commission to initiate, to many stakeholders that we participated in that process, and then to you to kind of make it happen. So let's say the hard work of what to do in the end with this initiative is really left a little bit in your hands. YERUN is a network that was established in 2016 precisely with a spirit to increase the cooperation in educational research. And we were taken as an example by the European Commission on what these alliances could work on. So there is no, let's say, surprise when many of the members of YERUN that at the time were working very actively together decided to be and embark themselves on this mission of creating YUFE. But YUFE is not the only alliance that we have in our network, but of course is one that is very important because all the members of YUFE are members also of our network. So that is one of the alliances that is also bringing this identity of young European research universities that we feel we need still to highlight more and make sure that the contributions of our universities and that aspect of youth, that of course it heals with time because we all grow up, but we will always be younger than King's College or Oxford University, I think. So there is still some youngness we can still attribute to ourselves. So other university alliances that are in our network, and I would like them to mention, we have 17 members out of the 23 members of YERUN in alliances. Some are here represented today, but others not. But I think it's important indeed that we are, and from our side, we're trying to encourage this collaboration between the different alliances, this change of practice, this change of learning, the challenges, and how we could help them as a network in their voicing of their policy messages, and whether we could help them in navigate better the political landscape and the different activities that should accompany the very good work that you're doing. So Alexander asked me a little bit, Sylvia, what do you think about the European strategy for universities? And what it's been achieving so far? And I said, oh my goodness, what a topic of that document that I don't know if many of you have actually read. I know that some other speakers will be showing you some presentations, our President Jesana as well, about the strategy. But I have to say we were working very hand in hand with many other university associations, including the UA, with the European Commission to create this strategy of universities. And when we saw the document, okay, it was okay, let's say. No? But we all were bringing a lot of position papers and messages of what we thought universities should go in the future and what they needed. And I have to say that the European Strategy for Universities used also a little bit, was used a little bit as a vehicle for the European Commission priorities. And that's something maybe that we need to acknowledge and that we need to be very strong as a sector. All different university alliances, but all different European university associations represented in Brussels, that it is very good that the European Commission is giving us a framework, but we should not become a victim of having to achieve the many different objectives that, and dreams they have. And we should keep that authenticity of our own missions and the drivers that we have of institutions, of things that we know that are working and things that we know that they are not working. And keeping that very strong in us. So that's something, and one message maybe I would like to give to all of you. The Commission can be proposing many things. We need to see them as how they can help us, but we should not let them drive us completely. So in any case, I want to highlight some positive aspects of this strategy. And you will all agree with me that indeed it has brought the political attention to the universities. Everybody talks now about the universities. And that is good, but that's also bad. Because it seems now that we have to solve all challenges. And we are saying that, well, not even one single university will be able to do it alone, not even a single researcher. Well, not only the university sector will be able to solve all these challenges, but still good that we are now at the spotlight. I think we have, and we have seen, that is growing from the momentum that came already after 2013 with a growing presence of more university associations in Brussels, and then the presence really of the European University Alliances. But it has also, and a very positive aspect, that was not so obvious. It has highlighted the fact that universities are not only about research. But you may see that in our name, and I haven't put it in any slides, but we are the Young European Research University Network. It's not only because we are doing research specifically in our network, but it is because research and what you're doing in research is still considered to be more prestigious for the work that you're doing. And the education mission and the service to society and how you're working with your communities is still a little bit in a second place. And that's something that maybe this strategy is bringing forward and is making us all aware that there are international rankings that maybe are not taking this dimension into account. And maybe there are some aspects that are very difficult to be compared by these international rankings. And we have to be unique and be meaningful to our own local communities. So that is something that I find is very important, and we should give thanks to the Commission to have highlighted that. They highlighted also another part that we mentioned and we touched upon a little bit in the previous panel, the current underfunding, but not only the underfunding of alliances, but in general the underfunding of the public expenditure for education research and the universities, the university sector, and how this needs to continue being highlighted as an important aspect that we all need to work for and make sure that you will be given the resources to work properly. There is also an acknowledgement of the requirement that we cannot do things alone, and I think that's the most important aspect as well and why we are here. The need to have investments that are working not only at a European level, but also complemented by national and regional funding. We know that there are some challenges because although maybe all countries are contributing to the European University Alliances initiative, it's not the same, it's not equal. And this, in the end, generates also some inequalities in how the different partners of alliances can contribute to the alliance. And then there is a little bit of an underestimate of the work that coordination entails, of all of your universities, of talking to each other, the dialogue, the building of structures, the creating this community. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. And it takes also the courage of very passionate people that decide to go against some walls and try to break them. So on that, I think I would like to congratulate the whole YUFE community, but also extend it to other university alliances. The work you're doing is fantastic, but of course it takes time. We have been talking and saying, oh, we should be as known as Erasmus. Well, Erasmus has 35 years. How many years have the European University Alliances? It's 5. So also trying to bring a little bit some realistic expectations on the different processes of European University Alliances, that you have different phases of development. And I touch upon that because we will tackle maybe later a little bit the monitoring of the strategy and the monitoring of the alliances, and that's also a very important point to be taken into account. We tend to fail to get indicators of things we can measure. And that in the end, those are the ones directing how we are going to value our success. But in many cases, many of the indicators that are available are actually not giving any meaningful information about the great changes that you're doing. And in the alliances, it was not only about more mobility and having more numbers, but it was about the better mobility, a more quality mobility, and students are more meaningfully engaged and better recognized of the work that they've done afterwards. And how do we measure that? Because that is the key aspect. And maybe we need there a very good collective effort to be more creative into how we're going to evaluate this success and not let ourselves, run into some numbers or indicators that will maybe present a picture but will fail to really describe the potential of the transformation that you're all making. I will leave it here, Alexander. Is it fine? Yeah? Then yes.
Yes, I would say it's more than fine. I think it's great that you set the stage in this way, and as much maybe as a difficult question it was, what do you think about this ambitious document? The questions that you pose for us somewhere around the middle of your speech are even more challenging and even more difficult. But hopefully we'll make progress also on those. So in the following part of this panel, we will hear from 4 representatives of European University Alliances. We will hear how they see, well, the European strategy for universities as a whole, but especially how they see the role of their alliances and European University Alliances in general for actually making progress and, most importantly, making real and lasting impact. So I would firstly ask Professor Dr. Snježana Prisa-Maržja, Rector of the University of Rijeka, as a representative of the YUFE Alliance.
Thank you. It would not be easy after Sylvia actually, mention everything, that actually were to mention. But I prepared actually a PowerPoint presentation to be more dynamic. It seems to me that I can easily communicate some of my points here. So I'm just waiting for the, okay. Yeah. Okay, I can go. Super, sorry. Okay, so this is European University, a European strategy for university. You all know this document, at least you know this communication document. So there were, 4, let us say, main areas, and Alexander, suggested to me probably that I focused on one, on the European dimension, how to strengthen the European dimension of higher education and research, and what is the role of the European alliances and the YUFE in this. But Yeah, so that are we, European universities, and if you remember these slides from the beginning, yeah, there are two elements or the two main goals, of the European universities then mentioned there. The first is the increase the international competitiveness of the European higher education, and the second was to bring Europeans together. So we have the European strategy for universities, we have the European agenda of the European universities, and what to do with that, So my question will be, what does it mean actually, the European dimension? We need to strengthen the European dimension, but what is the European dimension? So, according to me, this is the European values, So the European values actually define what Europeans have in common and what transcend their national or state identities. So this is the values of dignity, freedoms, equality, solidarity, citizens' right, justice, or shortly, always we said, it is the values of human rights, liberal democracy, and rule of laws. So European dimension probably refers on the European values, but also refers to the European political mentality. And what is it? What is the European political mentality? And two very, very famous philosophers, Habermas and Derrida, so that's them, said in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung in 2005, trying to define what is the Europeanism, and they said secularization, multilateralism, welfarism, trust in the state and skepticism about a market, realistic expectations about technological progress, and the low threshold or zero tolerance for the use of force. So maybe European dimensions refers on that. But I would like also to remind all of us that behind European values and behind Europeanism, there is European idea that is actually defined in the age of Enlightenment and Republicanism, and with these people with a strong haircut. Yeah, so the Leibniz, the Wolf and Immanuel Kant, and actually there are two main pillars of what is actually, according to me, the European dimension. It is the first pillar is the peace, harmony and mutual respect, and the second, enlightenment, public reason, or the rule of reason. So that is European dimension. So my first conclusion is actually that European dimension refers on the growing responsibility of the university for the resilient Europe. What actually Sylvia said, or also Vanessa in the first panel, at the university is actually, move the responsibility for, let us say, all these elements of our political and societal welfare. Also, to strengthen European dimension actually means to me, to strengthen European values and European idea, but, I would like, to stress here that we are actually the European idea and the European values at this very moment is under the serious threat. So my second part, I would like, just very, very briefly to share with you the idea of polycrisis. We now live in the era of polycrisis generally, but also polycrisis for European values and ideas. I would like, not just to be passed, quickly, because I know that I have, Alexander told me, so many slides, I don't know, so I'll take it seriously. So, the polycrisis, many challenges, pandemic as a public health issue, but also the question of the economics, post-pandemic period, crisis, challenges. Also the war in Europe that actually, of course, is a question of the human suffering, but also the price of war will be much more serious. Also, climate changes that actually means, displacing of millions of people, the suffering, undernourishing, the millions of people. So the climate changes is really, really very, very serious topic. The energy crisis, you can see the title here is from the Time that said that think the energy crisis is bad this year, just wait for the next year. Also, the growth projections, you know, the economical crisis, you know. We all witness, you know, the predictions from the October 22, you know, about decline, you know, especially for the Europe area, you know, the predictions for, you know, the economic, financial area is very, very serious. Also very important, the crisis of democracy, you know. All the reports, the nation in transit or the other actually registered the anti-democratic turn, especially in the area of Europe and also Eurasia. Also, the global expansion of the authoritarian rule, so the global freedom faces a dire threat. Also, migrations. New scientists, you know, our, you know, scientific journals actually communicate that, you know, the migrations actually reshape the world. Somebody mentioned before at the first panel, you know, the aging of the population. So many crises with a multiplicatory effect. So, when we are talking about our responsibility of the universities, European alliances, you know, so I think that, you know, we need to be very, very much aware what the challenges are, and the challenges are very, very serious, economical, political, societal in general. So, what is the role of European universities in this era of polycrisis and concerning, you know, all the European strategy goals and objectives, you know? So, the main tool for the strengthening European values idea in the challenging era of polycrisis, aiming at a resilient Europe, everything I mentioned before, actually, is structural, and also the people before, the wise people mentioned that, is structural, long-term, integrated and comprehensive internationalization, interconnectedness, and inclusive and innovative collaboration. Hence, European universities. There is no better tool to attain this European dimension. So, one slide about YUFE, what we actually done concerning the European strategy. Many things, but I think that probably the word that actually describe our university and our celebration of 50 years of us is the openness. Also, actually, is the perfect, you know, for explain what we actually do in YUFE, you know. So the open education, open programs, you know, so many tasks, so many work packages, so many, you know, initiatives on that, you know. So YUFE student journey, YUFE minors, micro-credentials, YUFE European degree, it is also mentioned here, YUFE diploma supplement track, YUFE star system, YUFE virtual campus. So many tools actually would like, you know, to develop, to contribute to the European, to strengthening the European dimension. Also in the area of the open science and the citizen science. Also, I think on the time, you know, many projects, you know, from the horizons. So YUFE Ring, Inno2YUFE, YUFE for postdocs, you know, also. Open innovation, knowledge valorization. Somebody mentioned that we need be more focused on the community engagement, on the collaboration with our local community, and of course, we did it, you know. So the YUFE Challenge teams, YUFE Entrepreneurship Initiative, YUFE Innovation Platform, YUFE Career Track. I'm sure that the other alliances also do the similar things, but on the other, the different titles, but we definitely develop that. And finally, open society and open Europe as also very important element for us, you know, also YUFE Town Hall, YUFE Diversity and Inclusivity Strategy, YUFE Academy, now YUFE Impact and Capacity Building. So a lot of tools that actually are completely aimed to develop the European dimension. But, this is the last slide, also we notice the challenges for development and sustainability for the YUFE and the European University Initiative in general. So, additional financial support. We need to be honest, you know, so this money that is actually dedicated or allocated for the 60 actually European alliances will not be enough. So we need to think how to, make the synergy between national, regional funds with the other European funds, and I think that this is really, really important issue. Also, Celia mentioned the monitoring, defining the criteria, how to follow us, how to probably, reward, the best achievements. Also, very important element for us is the removal of legal and administrative barriers for the further development. Of course, legal entities, joint degrees, European degrees, but also, the micro recognition, automatic mutual recognition, the recognition of the portable micro credentials, the accommodation of the European qualification framework. Quality assurance, our colleagues are here, from the state agencies. This is also very important, how to accommodate the new ESGs, after 2024 for the European alliances. We need to think also about that. And what is the crucial? Cooperation between the alliances and the cooperation with the other universities and the other stakeholders. So this is the very important element. So thank you. I think that I
Thank you very much also for presenting a bit of a, let's say, broader overview, which I think sets a really good stage for our next three speakers who come from our friends from the other European University Alliances. So I would invite Professor Gazela Pudar-Draško from Circle EU from University of Belgrade.
I expected to be last in this panel, so thank you for giving me the stage. Well, it's difficult to say something meaningful after these two brilliant speakers before me, and I could fully subscribe to what you said about the challenges and about opportunities of which strategy is giving to us on the European level. But I would like to focus on, because I was given also the task to focus on European way of life as aspect of this strategy. And I think it is especially meaningful for us coming from University of Belgrade as a member of Circle EU alliance, since we are coming from non-EU country, and this is especially challenging, how to involve non-EU countries into the European alliances and how to develop together what we can offer to students and what we can develop for us who are working there. The Circle U Alliance has 9 universities, and 3 of them are actually outside of the European Union. It's University of Oslo, King's College, who is also represented here, and the University of Belgrade. I would say that I'm coming from the most vulnerable university, since we are coming from the Western Balkans, and we are the first university which actually joined European Alliance from the Western Balkans. It's non-EU part of Europe. And we face all these challenges which Snježana mentioned in this last slide, especially recognition of qualifications, issue of joint diplomas, how to make our students aware of mobility opportunities, etc. So there is a very diverse series of the problems that we face when we want to go towards fulfilling the mission of European alliances, actually. But what I would like to emphasize here is that within the Circle U, we have actually 3 pillars, which are thematic pillars. I don't know about other alliances, but these were defined prior to several crises, the crisis of COVID, which hit us in 2020. And we define it as climate change, which obviously is a huge issue for all of us. Democracy, which again, Snježana very well pointed out, is something which is hitting very hard not only non-European countries, but now even more European countries, where my country is leading, I would say, and I'm really not proud for that. And the third issue is the issue of global health. So we somehow foreseen that the issue of global health is something which is radically important for our societies today. within the Alliance, we have developed several instruments which are actually helping us to connect among each other. So we have academic chairs which are connected within all these knowledge hubs which are defined thematically through these 3 pillars. We have Open School for Public Governance because our mission is also to impact the policies and try at least to impact the policies. We have Think and Do tank on the future of higher education, which is trying to actually to work exactly in this issue, what we can do as universities jointly to contribute to development, further development and advancement in the field of higher education. And not the least, but very important actually part of the Alliance is 2 things, student-led sustainable innovation, which put focus on the students and their creativity and how they can contribute to fulfilling the mission, and innovative education for transferable skills. This is a huge Erasmus Plus project which is actually focusing on how we can cooperate with other actors and how we can make our students use their skills which they acquire at universities. This is something also which is challenging. I think it's challenging for all of us, and I know that European Union and European Commission especially is focusing on transferable skills and markets, but this is challenging especially for us who are coming from social sciences and humanities, because there is no really specific skill which is so easily presented in the market when you are studying these type of the studies. And I think this is something which is the challenge which we need to focus also, because in some other technical, obviously, and other natural sciences, it's much easier that you present yourself in the market, but in our sciences that is not really the case. So this is something which I would just like to point out, that these type of sciences are very important actually for sustaining and advancing democratic societies. And European University Alliances needs to work together in order to achieve and help citizens to make democracies better. And I think this is the biggest maybe challenge of what we need to achieve through these, because we are somehow not working good enough, because obviously all the indicators which we have for the moment and for the Europe show that level of democracy, different indicators, indexes on democracy showing that democracy, quality of democracy is declining in our society. So where is the role of university and how we can work together in order to reverse this trend? This is I think the biggest question for all of us to achieve. And this is something also where we need very much the cooperation, and not only among us as peers, but also among our students. I think this is very, very important element which we somehow, at least I can say as someone who is coming from University of Belgrade, keep forgetting. This is not a tool just for students to go somewhere and learn something. This is also a tool which is giving them opportunity to learn about different culture, to learn how to become, I don't like the word tolerant really, because tolerant means that you tolerate but not accept, to accept others. So this is the issue which we need to tackle much more, I think, in the future. And especially what is important for us as representatives of the science. And it was really interesting for me when you said that these strategies putting university in focus in terms of education, because I'm coming from the region where actually education is much more appreciated, and professors and faculty in general are much more valued than institutes who are actually producing the science and research, which is it's completely different picture. And it comes obviously from very low investment in the science and research, which is in our country is very, very much present. But I want to say that we need to work together much more to return the trust in the science. This is something which is endangering democratic society, endangering the democracy, and endangering not only our way of life, our lives. With COVID, we actually saw not only that we have issue with the trust of citizens to our science, but we have also among us those who are actually not helping building citizens' trust in the science. So this is something which I think where our alliances, especially since I'm coming from the one who is focusing on global health and democracy, is important. So I would end my intervention here, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, especially for the also very powerful message at the end. And now I would also invite Professor Boštjan Markoli from the University of Ljubljana, representative of Utopia Alliance.
Good afternoon. So first I'd like to congratulate all the lady speakers before me, because they've raised all the problems, you know. And I can have as many solutions as I want, but they're going to have more problems for my solutions. So I don't want to be driven unless I'm in a cab, and I don't want to tear down the walls unless I'm sitting in a bulldozer. And I agree with you completely that underfunding is something that we are facing every day. So since you've raised all the issues, all I'm left down with now is to present what the Utopia has been doing and is doing. And in this respect, we're mainly focused on transition. This would be the digital and green transition. And we're covering, like every other alliance, we're covering the whole of the Europe. Numbers that you see now on the slide are showing how many people are involved, actually, how many students are going through our universities. And yes, we're hoping that their voice from bottom will come up, and people who make decisions will hear them, finally. So these are some of the numbers showing what the Alliance is doing in respect of funding. I have to point out at this moment that we have been enlarged last year by 4 additional universities. This is why you see the jump in the income, and of course in the number of students and so on. So what are we focused on in the Utopia is going beyond Europe, and we focus on Western Balkans especially. We have good relationships with the universities that are listed here in the slide, but we're also trying to be, with our impact, going beyond Europe, meaning reaching out to the non-EU countries, and of course going even further, like for instance the Guild and other alliances that are working, trying to make connections with the Africa and other continents. So our vision and mission is to empower future generations with academic knowledge. This is something that everybody in Alliance is trying to do, to connect communities in order to transform our universities. The final goal is to have the European university, have a European degree. Everybody's actually aiming at that, but the ways are sometimes different, and they're windy ways before we get there. We do have to talk a lot to each other. We have to discuss the ideas, and being involved into Utopia for the past 2 years or 1.5 only, and having background in natural science, it's very hard for me to do all that talking with and going back and forth with ideas. But these are summarized on this slide. So what we're actually aiming at and how we would like to get there. So what we're doing in Utopia is an ongoing process that started in 2019, and it was called Utopia 2050. And in 2022, it was renowned for 4 more years, and we called it Utopia More, because 2050 seemed like the ideas that have been mentioned and the challenges that we are facing. But now, in the future, we have to offer something more. And as I said, we've done a lot of talk on that. What would that be? And as I'll show later on, we have 6 goals that we have set out, And we feel that these are the most important goals that we would like to get to. So the achievements and lessons that have been learned from the pilot phase of only 3 years have been very good. One was definitely the governance structure. So how do you structure your alliance to be effective, to be fast, to be responsive? So the challenges are out there, as pointed by the previous speakers, and they're mounting every day. And you have to have your alliance very fast responsive, not just responsible, also proactive, as you said. We should be passing the European Commission all the time with our problems, with our ideas, but not just with ideas, because we have to pass them with problems, and they have to come back sometimes with their ideas as well, because we're usually just tasked, we have the problem, you solve it, and then we'll finance you. That's not that easy for us always. So the second phase of Utopia in 2022 to 2028 is to develop the global connecting communities and steps that are listed below. I'm not going to go into details because Alexander is showing me his watch.
I'm just looking at the time, don't worry.
I got it. And our long-term goal is to transform education to get to the Utopia College or university. So that's the main idea. So to be able to issue the overall valuable paper that will say this is the student gets at the end of entering the Utopia College. And he can go around Europe or beyond and be recognized as a person educated at Utopia, at European University. So that's the ultimate goal. When we get there, how we get there, remains to be seen. Our long-term goal for the local to global engagement, the Utopia Global Institute, a choice of policy scope, a method, and a focus. And finally, our 6 objectives for the period of next 4 years, just 3 now, is ensuring efficient management. That's very important. Steering Utopia, creating conditions for connection, internally connecting communities to empower knowledge, externally involving local to global ecosystems and providing efficient common tools, and creating long-lasting impact through dissemination. You can do a lot, work a lot, but if you don't disseminate, people just don't know what you're doing. So it has to go out. And we believe that our strength, especially in Utopia, take pride in that we get a bottom-up process. You got in YUFE, you get your student forum. We've got also students involved, but sometimes they're more heavily involved, sometimes less. We always encourage them to be more involved, to tear down the walls and so on. But sometimes it's difficult, but we'll get there at the end. So we feel that the Utopia is more than a project because it'll end up having the European University, which is what we're striving for. Of course, encompassing and having all the values that have been so nicely presented by the lady speakers before me. And thus, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Marcoli, for this opportunity to see how Utopia perceives its role. And finally, we have a 4th European University Alliance with us, that is Arcus. So we now have Fernando Galan, the director of Arcus Alliance.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's always difficult to stand between colleagues and lunch, so I hope you still bear with me a little bit. It's also a little bit difficult to say something new of what has been said, but yeah, I think I will try to focus on the things that have not been said or to bring a different view on that. So first of all, thank you to the YUFE Alliance for inviting Arcus. It's a pleasure. And thank you for Rijeka University also to host it us. I'm coming from the University of Granada, which is coordinating the Arcus Alliance. And just very briefly, who we are. We are now 9 universities in the Alliance with one associate partner in Ukraine, which is the Kiev Mohila Academy. As you know, due to the invasion of Ukraine, we were very much encouraged to support the Ukrainian system. And we decided, obviously, we will support the whole Ukrainian system, but we decided to focus our efforts with one particular university in order to make it more effective. But it's not exclusive. And we wanted to highlight that as including it as associate partner in our alliance. So as you can see, we are 9 universities that are coming from medium-sized cities, but at the same time, universities that are highly internationalized. So we do care very much about the engagement with the regions and how we can bring inclusion to regions which are not in capital cities or colleagues and societies that have no access to such a good infrastructure when you are in a very highly industrialized area, for example. Our big universities, as you can see, research intense and comprehensive ones. Same as YUFE, it's been born within Jerum. Part of the members of the Arcus Alliance comes from the Coimbra group. Not all of them, but that's how it was initiated. And what I want to bring here is a discussion about the values and what brings us together as Europeans. And for me, it's clearly diversity and how we embrace this diversity for working together. There is no more than that. All of the rest of the things are not European values, I'm sorry. There are fundamental values for all of us, all around the world. It's a different way of how we interpreted those values in Europe. And that brings me to the question, why we are doing all of this for, why we are here. The 5 million euros that the Commission gave us for the first 3 years were enough? Or were covering the cost? We were really doing all of this for 5 million euros? I hope not. Because otherwise this is a waste of time and of money. Alexander asked me to focus on the 4th point on how to reinforce universities as the drivers of Europe's global role and leadership, which for me it's a little bit of an afterthought in the strategy. For me, the important ones are the first 3 ones, and mainly, as I said, how we embrace diversity as a way, as a European dimension, but also as a European way of life, what they call the Commission in these documents and other strategies. But also how we work together as Europeans, but also with other parts of the world, in solving global challenges. And that's sustainability, that's the energy crisis that we have now in Europe, but that's a global crisis at the end of the day, how we embrace digitalization. And that's not only a challenge for us here in Europe. We may have a different approach to it, but it's not only European challenge or European value in that regard. But however, if you have a look to the strategy, the actual tools or the flagship initiatives are not so much related to the global attractiveness. I mean, they talk about the European University Alliance, but also we are constrained by a framework, by a call, by the regulations of the program. And only Erasmus Plus program countries can fully participate in the call. So we are already not having the opportunity to bring on board some of our colleagues from the United Kingdom, Switzerland, or other European countries that are not part of the Erasmus Plus program. Now, thanks God, we can also welcome Western Balkans, but that was not the case before. Also, Bologna countries can only be associated, which is very nice, but it doesn't mean any actual impact because they cannot benefit from funding. So we can work with them, but nothing is stopping to work with them without having them formally in our grant agreements. So then again, we are constrained very much by certain regulations, which are not only the national ones. We always complain about national regulations, but sometimes there are also European regulations. That doesn't make too much of a sense. So I wanted just to focus here on the 2 aspects, mainly on the alliances and how the alliances can contribute to this global dimension of the European strategy, and also the idea of the European degree label. I remember when Macron gave the speech at Sorbonne, everybody was saying, like, but European universities, we are all European universities. We are all universities in Europe. What's different, this new thing we want to do? And now with a degree, it's a little bit of the same. Like, what is a European degree that is not something that we have already? So that's where I would like to focus a little bit my intervention. And I promise to be sticking to time, but I wanted to highlight a couple of things from Arcus and how we actually see this. And you will see in our mission that we want to act as a global player. So, okay, we are constrained by a regulation. We cannot use part of the money that you are giving to us for that, but that's not all the money all the resources we are using for this. And we are committed to be a global player. And when it comes to values, this same story we were discussing, they are a way of interpreting the European values, and we use European values in our value statement. But for me, it's exactly that: the diversity, but the solidarity, the pursuit of peace. We are a continent that has been at war for many years, and we are still at war, despite we were not fully convinced that there will be a war in our lifetime again. So that's how we perceive values from Arcus side. That was a huge discussion, believe me, in identifying the values that we all share. And I think that's quite clear. I mean, there is nothing different. Also, let me also put you the example of the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was initiated as European Magna Carta Universitatum that brings together the values of universities in Europe, and then was opened up for the rest of the universities around the world to sign it. So this is the same. It's an European way of working, of interpreting certain values, but I will challenge you to tell me what's different, what's a particular European value that is not to be shared with anybody around the world. And here is also that for us it's very important that we are stronger if we work together, and that's the value that the alliances are bringing to us. We might go faster if we are going alone. University of Granada is a university that has thousands of partners all around the world, universities, NGOs, and so on and so forth. But working together with an alliance, it helps the university to work stronger center aspects and move maybe not as fast as we will go alone, but for sure farther. I will not stop here. I will also not stop here because this is something that you will see many of us have in common. We are common in certain aspects. It's incredible not only the areas that we have in common, but also the challenges we are facing. And then again, challenges are not only European, are not only national. Our own university regulations are challenging sometimes to this kind of collaboration, and this is why it's important to work together, not within your alliance, but also between alliances. I think that's key. I'm meeting Daniela almost monthly, and Magdalena and the colleagues from YUFE, precisely because of that, because we believe that this challenge has to be solved together. And we are addressing common things. But then again, the digitalization and artificial intelligence, the Green Deal, is something that is affecting the whole world. And European identity and heritage is something important for us precisely to embrace that diversity. These focus areas were agreed way before the war, way before the strategy was put on the table, and they were agreed before the mission statement was actually approved, because we thought that those are the actual areas that were affecting, and we as universities have to be solving societal problems, and those were the ones we wanted to work together in order to have a meaningful contribution. Also, how we think that we can contribute meaningfully to the global arena is through the Talent and Innovation Fund, one of the tools you see there. We have put aside a considerable amount of money from the Commission grant to give away grants and scholarships to students to come to our alliance and to study with us, because we thought that that's the best way to attract and give opportunities to talent from all around the world that they might not have that opportunity otherwise. So that's how we thought we could have also a meaningful contribution to that. And very shortly, I will just also talk to you about the ED Lab, which is this new project that the Commission launched recently, and the University of Rijeka is also coordinating one of them, about the European degree label. University of Granada is coordinating one that is bringing together Arcus, Enlight, Utopia, and CEU. So four alliances working together. And then again here, we also dedicated a full work package about the global attractiveness. why a European degree should be attracting colleagues from all around the world, and what will be the added value of that European degree. So that's something also we will try to explore further. And yeah, we hope that we will share also this work together with the colleagues in Rijeka and the other alliances, because this is a 12-month project. It's something that we cannot do alone. It's something we want to collaborate strongly, and this is something we need to continue working together. So that will be my message. Let's embrace diversity, but let's try to work together in order to overcome those challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fernando, especially for this key message at the end. I can also say that one of the very sincere thoughts when planning this event was that it might be a tool in actually pushing forward the future renewed and strengthened cooperation between alliances. So hopefully that will be the case. However, we now have our final speaker who is joining us online from Vienna, I believe. So Dr. Alexander Hasgal, the floor is yours. I hope you can hear us and everything works well.
Yes, I hear you very well. So thank you very much. And I'm really sorry not to be with you. I would really have loved to be there. And I checked this morning social media, and it seems you have a lot of fun also being there. But I'm actually now, we have just a working group. We call them thematic peer group on postdoctoral researchers, which is actually also a topic, I think, which is related to the strategy, and it's our kickoff meeting. So I can not be with you, but I think we have also two YUFE member university, Antwerp and Limerick, in our group. So there will be a certain exchange. So what I will do now is to share my screen, and I prepared a little presentation and also want to be in time. I hope you can see it very well. Yes. So maybe first about who I am. So I'm representing the EUA Council for Doctoral Education. So we are, like my colleague Annalena, who talked this morning, part of the European University Association. And we are a membership service, and we bring together now more than 270 universities, 38 countries, and we are really addressing and discussing here the issues of doctoral education. And when we look about the history actually of the doctorates in Europe, and I will particularly talk about doctorates, doctoral education in relation actually to this strategy for universities, we see quite a change. So while the doctorate always has been important, it never has been really in the center of the strategic work of an institution. It is, as we all know, this originally more this kind of semi-private relation more between the supervisor or mentor and the doctoral candidates. But what we see now, especially in the last, I would say up to 10 years, that it really has become kind of in the center of university strategies. So you will find hardly any topic, any discussion, being it research ethics integrity, being it open science, being it internationalization, collaboration, addressing societal challenge, where there is not somebody saying, well, we need to do something for the next generation of researchers. And this, of course, includes doctoral candidates. And that's why we are today in Vienna with our group, also including also postdoctoral researchers. So we can really see that when we talk about strategy, there is a lot of connection to actually a lot of elements which are also in this European strategy for universities. And I tried to be in this really short time to connect actually to some of them. And what I would like to start, and here I am a bit relating to the previous thematic peer group we had on co-tutel in European universities, is the issue of the joint doctorates, which are part of this. And maybe the first point here, which we need to be clear, and it was already mentioned before, what is the new here? So there is already a shared and global understanding about what is actually the core of a doctorate. Now, of course, you will find different ideas about, for instance, the value of it, careers before and after, institutional support, but a doctorate is actually a doctorate. And it's definitely important when we talk about labels or developing other kinds of doctorate like joint or European co-tutels and so on, what is actually the added value of this adjective and what it means and how can we maintain actually this common understanding of the core. In this group, so the first question is, why are we looking at it? And some point what we saw now within the universities and in our discussion is that when we look into driver, we will always find two key drivers. On one hand, the doctoral candidates themselves, who are often interested to work with a very specific universities because it's related to the research project. And on the other side, of course, the university leadership with a more strategic way. So we see a diversity of motivations actually dealing with it. And this is also important when we work about this, that this kind of dialectics between a more bottom-up approach within, where the single candidates or supervisor actually are the drivers of this kind of collaboration, and what is also here discussed in a strategy, the much bigger policy goal and context. Now, what are the biggest challenge? And this is one topic we need to see, and we discussed it a lot. We are still confronted with very strict, sometimes legal framework. We saw this especially when we speak about co-tutel, and we saw a lot of colleagues actually are really close to develop some kind of post-traumatic experiences after spending years to deal with this different kind of framework. So when we speak about how or what can we do or what do we need to make this kind of strategies, and this important role of university and collaboration important is really to address and how to increase here the flexibility and also the autonomy of institutions. So this is maybe we discussed before about my presentation. So the first point which we can talk about now. In the second half of my very short, and so I don't see if somebody looks at the watch, but I really try to be short, is actually a document we published, which was a vision paper on doctoral education, which actually came quite in parallel to the question, to this European strategy. And when in the preparation, I was actually looking at some keywords which relate between the strategy and what we have discussed together in a quite long process last year with our members. And a first point is society needs universities and doctoral candidates as being in the center of this university strategy play a role here. And a point we saw is actually the role of doctoral candidates as bridge builders. Between research and society, be kind of a glue. So also related to this idea, there is not necessarily always the need to reinvent the wheel and to kind of to make or a necessity, let's say, to recognize actually this role. We discussed about the role of communication and the need also of institutions to make them visible. However, and this is among a lot related to this, a lot of discussions related to the societal context of universities, the doctorate is about fundamental research, and we need, and it's also about interdisciplinarity, it's about the humanities, about bringing disciplines together, and we need also as institution to discuss what we can do when we ask actually early stage researchers to be publicly engaged and with society, what it means also in, as we see, sometimes quite challenging societal and political context. Then another point in the strategy which we saw is this idea of actors of change in the twin green and digital transition. And this has been actually identified as the first point among our members, like the first kind of way forwards we need to see as university when we talk about the doctorate, and seeing digitalization as something comprehensive and holistic, having the different areas, the need of digital skills, essential for development, but also the role of digital research infrastructures. And here, and the yellow here are usually the challenges or the threats. The digital divide is an element we need to see, the need to find new balances, but also the question of mental health, societal isolation, which has been, of course, discussed a lot during the pandemic. A second point we see when we talk about the green transition, pretty similar, we see the SDGs, so a more holistic understanding. We just had a workshop on greening of doctoral education and the connections to equality, to inclusion. The question of first-generation doctoral candidates, the societal background is important, as including the perspective of the Global South. And it was mentioned before, diversity is one of the key elements, actually, of Europe. And here we can find it again. But at the same time, fundamental research again is on the center, and we need, when we talk about strategies, how a strategy is related to this fundamental principle. When we talk about protecting European democratic values, and this is a topic we see also in the doctorate increasingly becoming relevant, is academic freedom. Doctoral candidates now, or early stage researchers in general, are often the most vulnerable group within the institution, lacking of the right networks, dependent on building their own careers. And as universities, we need to actually enable the candidates to actually enjoy this academic freedom, and also to understand that threats to these freedoms are not always coming kind of physically, as we know, and which also need to be addressed, but also question of too excessive directionism in research, and not understanding that it's part of this academic freedom also to be open and to have these more diverse perspectives. Now, another point about these future-proof skills, as it says in this strategy, and in the question I received, there was the topic of skills and skills mismatch. Now, this is a topic we can discuss a lot. Unfortunately, we do not have really a lot of empirical knowledge about this. We also have not a clear definition what skills and skills mismatch mean. What we can say is, and at the beginning when we talk about this multi-crisis, the doctoral education and researchers can not only address the known and the skills which may be needed today for certain work, the unknown of the future, so the being prepared for what may come, and the skills to deal with crisis, to deal with insecurity, that this is definitely a key element actually of the doctorate, and which we may actually need to strengthen here. Then the funding, this was the last point for my 8 minutes. Is funding, of course, is always mentioned as one of the very key element what we need. However, and this is, as you see, I have quotes actually below about this topic. It's probably also one of the most complicated here. We see that we tend, especially when we put the doctorate in the center of the strategies and to address a lot of needs, of course, it also increases the workload and the pressure on early stage researchers. And while this is good, we at the same time in a situation also to reduce funding to sometimes a little bit restrictive framework, that the duration should be even shorter. And we need also, if we want that the doctorate, and I'm representing this here, and the early stage researchers can be part of addressing these challenges, we need to discuss about the appropriate funding, but also about duration. Yes, so at the end, since I cannot be with you and not join the dancing tonight, as it was mentioned in the beginning, I would like to invite you also to come to our next annual meeting. So this is open to everybody, where we actually look into the role of communication. And this is not only here to kind of inviting you to a meeting, but we see that a lot of the work, especially when we see such a communication here, is to use communication, to use a discussion actually among early stage researchers about these complexities, about this dilemmata we see when we speak about this societal engagement and academic cultures, and we need to discuss this. And with that, I thank you for your attention and wish you a wonderful meeting today.
Presentation about the doctoral education. We have hopefully, so to say, closed the circle and covered all different perspectives on this issue. Now, we are very much over time, but if there are questions, we can perhaps take just one question for our panelists and then move to lunch. There's a question right over there.
Again, I'm so sorry. It's more a general question for everyone, since everyone had mentioned students at some point or stage, and also again communication, plus with this lovely invitation which was there. Is this also accessible for students of all of our alliances, perhaps? Can we also take part in this? That is more or less my question. So that we can also maybe facilitate not just amongst yourselves conversation, but also amongst ourselves. That would be very nice.
So if I may, actually we missed the student participation in this panel, but we arrange to present the different perspectives from the different networks, different associations, alliances, but definitely you are with us, as we said at the beginning. The student role here is of the extreme importance, and so that's we count on you, and I'm so glad that our students actually always put a question there.
Hi, yeah, it's working now. Yeah, within there is some sort of a regular talks between the alliances, between the coordination of the alliances, and within these regular talks there are subgroups. We are also trying to encourage the students to get in touch between them. There has been several activities going on there, but what we have trying to do is trying to encourage. In the case of Arcos, I haven't installed our governance structure. We have student council, and we are encouraging them to get in touch with other students' forums and councils between alliances. But also we have allocated to them a budget for this second phase. They have a budget for their own, for organizing trainings and activities, and they can invite, and we will encourage them to invite colleagues and students from all alliances. So I think that's also something important, that the activities that you organize yourselves, I'm pretty sure that within YUFE you will have also students' activities. You think about the students from other alliances, and you maybe reserve a couple of places for initiating this dialogue.
But I wanted to, it's not necessarily to respond to the student, but I wanted to make a 2-minute concluding remarks, if I can. Can I?
Can I then follow up first on the comment? I think this is an important point, Manisha, but I also believe brings up a challenge, that is continuity in student engagement, because all the bodies experience lots of turnover. And I think in that sense is, again, really important what Rianne suggested earlier, to try to connect the student representation and engagement in the alliances with universities learn from these bodies, and not necessarily use the same system also in the alliances, but really discuss and solve the issue of continuity. Because if there is continuity, if you have consolidated ways to be engaged also across alliances, it will be also much more feasible to support that from the administrative side. So I think this is something else, Fernando, for us to work on together.
Very briefly. I don't want to make the whole concluding remarks, but I learned from the first panel something that really kind of touched me from the student representative, is what Margarita, that she said, one of the most important things that I've learned in YUFE is the community engagement and the volunteering work that this initiative is recognizing, and the value that we're putting into that. And we are still in a society where if you don't measure something, then it doesn't value. If it doesn't count for my curricula, then I don't do it. And we are leaving these kind of things for just the goodwill of people. But I think in the other initiative where we have now joint degree, I think many of our alliances were also thinking, shall we really go for a European degree? Shall we try and test new things? But here again comes the perversion a little bit of the European Commission. But now we give you money to do it. Okay, then focus on that. So if I can then say a little bit, something that I would like our alliances to take maybe a bit more courage, is into saying, you have the knowledge that knows really how these alliances can survive in the future. You have the knowledge also to question some things that are not working well and where you could focus on. So don't try to be driven by that, but get this kind of genuity, things that were even taken before this European degree call came into, but some ideas you already had that were going beyond that, and try to trust that a little bit, because the most important thing is really to build on these values of responsibility, empathy and solidarity that in many cases are not with the formal ways of learning. So that kind of informal connection, continue bringing it alive. I think that's one of the things that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvia. As always, a very powerful message. And let us just give another round of applause to the whole panel, to all our speakers. We will now move to lunch, but before that, just two very important pieces of information for our guests. So first of all, tonight, as you have seen in the program, we have dinner, a dinner which is not in Rijeka, so the transport is organized. And so after we finish with our program today at 6:40, the buses will be here to take us to the restaurant venue. So 6:40 here in front of the Faculty of Civil Engineering. Now, in the afternoon, in the program, we have some internal YUFE working body session. So for our guests, there is some free time in the afternoon. So that was one key thing. The other is that we will very soon send you the table with the airport transfer for tomorrow. As you may have heard, there are again some issues in Germany with Lufthansa strike, so some flights are cancelled and there was a need to rearrange the schedule. But I wanted to point out that you will receive this soon, so please look at your emails just so that you can confirm that everything is correct, what is written there. So that's it now. We will move to the restaurant, which is just to the left outside of the building. Everyone who was here yesterday already knows.